You deserve care. You deserve compassion. You deserve understanding. You deserve belonging. And any systems that support discrimination in exchange for safety is a failing system. Hello, welcome to Dwell On It, a series where I, Taylor, answer your questions about my lived experience as a trans woman. If you'd like to have your questions answered in a future episode, please don't hesitate to add them to the comments or send by DM, depending on what platform you're watching this on. But definitely feel free to ask the questions and I will have them included so that they get drawn out randomly for a future episode. More often than not, this episode specifically, I want to get to 2 questions that I received by text, mainly for the fact that I'm editing a pretty fun series of videos that's going to get uploaded soon, so I'd like to make sure to keep some time available for that. Something else that I'd like to start doing in this series going forward is adding a visual description. It's something to be transparent about that I realized was a more important feature to add to introductions because it certainly helps when it comes to accessibility and also giving a better understanding of who is speaking for viewers or listeners who may have a visual impairment. Like I said, my name is Taylor. I do use she, her pronouns. I am a 6'1" trans woman. I am white. I am wearing a black and white sweater-esque sort of thing. I've got a green t-shirt underneath and I've got a small chain. My color palette for my makeup is pretty much based on something brown. I've got long, just past shoulder length, naturally wavy hair. It's not naturally blonde, but you can certainly see a little bit of the natural hair coming out in the roots there. Something that is a little bit on the trademark Taylor aesthetic. I got my hair swept over the left side of my face while I've got 3 piercings underneath my right eye. They're small, medium, and large going outward, and they actually direct towards a cluster earring at the top of my right ear. I've got 2 stud ear piercings and 1 nose piercing as well. I'm in my living room / office, and behind me, not a whole lot. Beige walls, and I've got an elliptical, recumbent bike, and a treadmill behind me. That's pretty much what we're looking at right now. I'd like to address in the description 2 fundraisers that I'm part of. One is going to be on June 5th, and one is going to be June 11th. It's going to be Run for Women and Walk for Muscular Dystrophy. I've got a target for each fundraiser, $1,411. If you wouldn't mind, please jump in the description and check the links for either or both, of course. Add a contribution as you see fit. You do get a tax receipt as well for an online contribution. Every dollar amount counts. Supporting women's mental health and mental health awareness, or supporting Canadians who are experiencing any of over 160 neuromuscular disorders, absolutely appreciated. We know that they appreciate your help too, so please jump in the description and see what we can add to that today. Staying in line with the visual description, as a matter of fact, and also as I mentioned earlier, that there are 2 texts that I would like to just focus on for this week's episode of Dwell On It. One of the questions that I received as a text was a question, as a matter of fact, about my piercings. And the question was, your cheek gems, how do the piercings stick? Don't you feel them rub your sinuses? It is a really fun question. I do get asked about these piercings all the time. I like the attention that they give, to be completely honest, because eyes up here when I'm talking sort of thing. The reality of how they are implanted is exactly that. There's a little anchor. It's about a little L-shaped anchor that's, I'm trying to show what about 7 millimeters looks like. I think is the standard number. It's a small little L-shaped anchor, so the piercing goes in, and by that the anchor sits right underneath a small layer of flesh there, and it heals up around, and then there it is. And so with that being said, I don't feel them affect my sinuses or anything like that because they are on top of my cheekbone. When the piercings were happening, I needed to make sure, of course, to keep myself rather stoic so that I can, provide the best surface possible for the piercer to take care of things. But I think it was also rather advantageous by having pretty much a table to be able to press right against. And what you see is history there. And so I'm super happy with these. I don't feel them at all. Once in a while, I'm not gonna lie though, the coolest thing happens when the sunlight's coming in and you could see the reflection of them coming onto the wall or something like that. I remember the first time that I got the piercings after they were healed up, and I'm doing a workout and I'm doing some push-ups, and seeing a little prism on the yoga mat was so cool. I don't know why that was surprising to me, but it was like, oh yeah, no, that's gonna happen now. I don't feel them. They're just part of my body now, which is fantastic. Literally the only time that I really recognize them, aside from obviously taking care of them, is when you get a little hair that would find its way to wrap around it and you're like, what do I do? And obviously it's whatever, but that's it, right? I don't feel them, they don't touch anything else, there's just their skin, bone underneath, and so the second question, I'm not gonna lie, it's not going to be a fun question or an answer. Full transparency, I've been sitting on this wondering, how do I want to address it? And I think I have an answer now, which is why I'm trying to capture the moment. I do want to disclose very clearly that this is going to be a possibly triggering topic for some, if not many, and so if this is something where you find a need to step away from, please do. I'm not going to be upset or offended by this. I think it was just a fantastic question that I received from a friend of mine, and I think it's important to help amplify the question and at least help provide what I would consider a not unreasonable answer for it too. I do have one question where I'm a little confused. Where does the transphobia from women who have been assaulted by a man come from? Why do they need to center themselves and create a hierarchy among vulnerable people? I guess it just circles around to hate or bigotry or misinformation. It'd be handy if you have tips for engaging women survivors of domestic assault in conversations about safe spaces for trans women at your leisure if this is draining. It is draining. I'm not gonna lie, it's draining on all parties involved in this conversation. And so the first thing that I can absolutely say before answering any questions is addressing the concerns of survivors of violence. I don't want to come across sounding hyper cliche, like make sure to say the right things, Taylor, because it's obvious. Victims of violence require attention and support, and when it's important to consider fears or apprehensions, all feelings are valid. I'm not taking anything of that away. Nothing comes away from validating the fears and the concerns of any victim of violence. Where this got difficult for me to help articulate is because trans women are disproportionately victims of violence compared to cis women survivors. And I'm not going to address this in any way of like, well, you should be taking care of the trans women. Not the question. Not the answer, not the concern, because a victim of violence is a victim first before an identity second. So let's take that and put it aside. When it comes to where the root of the fear comes from, I don't want to speculate anything because, again, a victim of violence goes through trauma, right? Like there's a huge spectrum of emotion when the reality is an individual has been violated and they are very right to feel concerned about their safety going forward in life. Where it comes from is so multifaceted that it is difficult to identify, and that I'm not in that seat to start pointing fingers about this is where it comes from. But what I can say is that no matter what anyone's experience is, regardless if it's a victim of abuse, whether it's somebody who is hyper-privileged and doesn't even know what abuse looked like because they've never experienced it themselves, is that there's no space to validate transphobia in exchange for the health and safety of someone else. So that is one thing to remember out of this, and they're literally two different conversations. It is possible to address the safety of someone who feels that their safety is being compromised while also respecting the needs of others. I think the best way to engage a victim of abuse first, let's get that abuse acknowledged. Let's get those concerns of safety and fear handled before we start discussing the logics, the realities, the laws, the human rights, the thises and the thatses. Let's focus on, let's get feeling safe before we can start talking about what's safe and unsafe. And then start talking to that survivor about what is it that's happening that is making you feel that this individual, who also deserves safety, support, respect, dignity, just as much as you do, what is it about them that is raising these concerns for you? Because it might be an amplification of those colonial beliefs of penis equals man. It might come from the notion that, you know, the overpopularized concept that trans individuals are sex fiends. So it comes to asserting that conversation that trans women are women. They deserve the safety, the respect, the dignity, just as much as the survivor that's concerned and all the other survivors, whether it's in a shelter, whether it's in a community, whether it's in a conversation that hasn't been disclosed. I want to underline, an individual, anywhere, of any type, of any class, any belonging, any person has a potential to be nefarious. I'm not going to take that possibility and that reality away. But the concept of a nefarious individual to get brushed upon everyone else, that ain't right. And that's never acceptable. Violence and abuse, sexual assault, none of those are acceptable either. And I want to readdress that if there is a victim of sexual violence, that their feelings are valid, their feelings are absolute priorities to ensure that they feel confident and comfortable to go forward in life, in society, without constantly questioning how they stand around others, without questioning their safety and their security. There is no question that that is a priority and must continue to get acknowledged, recognized, supported. It is important to take that conversation, though, and not allow it to amplify transphobia. Because victims of sexual assault, sexual violence include trans individuals, and as I mentioned, at a significantly higher, very disproportional rate to cisgender individuals. I hope I'm answering the question clearly in a way of saying there's not a one-size-fits-all answer. From my perspective, there is a one-size-fits-all answer, essentially saying trans women are women, and they have the right to a safe space just as much as a cisgender woman in a women's shelter, with women's needs, with an understanding that women are women as a whole, ridiculously disproportionate in terms of being victims of sexual assault, sexual violence. And that's not even considering any other types of vulnerable communities, disabled communities, BIPOC communities, so on and so on and so on and so on. Women as a whole deserve the right to be protected, their needs amplified, supported, and ensured to not be victims of assault and violence by others who feel that they can put their power over them for whatever reason at whatever time. I want to remind again, my point is of two things. Victims of assault, victims of violence deserve their feelings to be heard, deserve to be understood, deserve to be respected, that their experience is valid. That experience cannot come at the compromise of the dignity, respect, safety, and basic human rights of another individual, such as a trans woman. A victim of abuse is a survivor first and an identity second, regardless of your gender identity, your gender expression. You deserve care, you deserve compassion, you deserve understanding, you deserve belonging. And any systems that support discrimination in exchange for safety is a failing system. I personally know people who have survived sexual abuse, sexual violence. I as well have been a victim of sexual abuse. Kind of comes with the territory. So I can't imagine it ending anytime soon. I deserve to be able to walk into that same shelter if I ever needed to. Because trans women are women. I knew that this was going to be a bit of a difficult episode, so if you're still here, thank you for hanging in there. It's never a fun discussion discussing sexual abuse, sexual assault, sexual violence, and the trauma that experiences after that. I don't really know how to end this episode on such a super hyper happy, cheery note, so I suppose this is a great time to stay pretty basic with things. As I mentioned at the beginning, there are two links for fundraisers that I am part of. One is for Run for Women, which is for women's mental health awareness and women's mental health programs. I'm trying to raise $1,411 for that, so please make sure to jump in there, donate what you can see fit. The other, of course, is Walk for MD, which is another fundraiser I'm taking part of, as I mentioned, looking to raise $1,411 for that one too, and the goal for that is awareness and support for muscular dystrophy and pretty much over 160 neuromuscular disorders. Canadians need your help and support, so please make sure to jump in there, throw a donation down, get your tax receipt, and then everybody smiles. In the description, as well as always, is a call to action through a link by New Mode, and that is looking to encourage political leaders in your area to improve the corporate social responsibilities of businesses, organizations, and companies in your area, in your neighborhood, and it takes less than a minute to go ahead and add your voice. It's already a pre-made letter. It goes to the political leaders in your area and also to the mayors of Winnipeg and Toronto too. Please keep your eyes open to the channel for some exciting content. As I mentioned at the top, I am going to be editing a very fun series soon, which is why this one is going to be a little shorter than usual, but I do want to make sure to keep space for that time so I can get that uploaded sooner rather than later. So please subscribe, hit the notification icon as well if you'd like to stay up to date with any new uploads. And I think with that, we're going to wrap up. This is a good time to call it a night. So for everyone watching right now, please enjoy the rest of your day. So have a great night. Have a great rest of your week as always. And I'll talk to you later.